Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the what if. Ichigo reawoke to bright rays of sunshine pouring through the window. Stretching his arms over his head, he couldn't help the satisfied groan that came. Another damn fine day, he thought to himself. He had been awakened by a rather inspired Yoruichi this morning. While it had not been expected, Ichigo could not find it in him to complain. After a rather passionate round of love-making, Yoruichi had left Ichigo in bed as she went to get ready for the day, while Ichigo had fallen back asleep. Awake again, Ichigo thought back to the past couple of weeks. Immediately following their romantic evening and reunion, both Ichigo and Yoruichi had found themselves to be quite inseparable. Every day, immediately after their duties and sometimes during they would leave to spar, or simply walk and talk. They would find any and every opportunity and reason to be in each other's presence. While they had certainly reconnected in a positive manner, there was no denying some remaining tension. As an unwritten rule of sorts, what had happened as well as any other manner of the topic connected to Yoruichi's Zanpakuto was not spoken of. As he could no longer hear its cry or feel its energy, Ichigo guessed that she had hidden it elsewhere. He couldn't say that he was happy about that situation's apparent lack of resolution, but knew that bringing it up was a fruitless endeavor. The first morning had been the hardest. Yoruichi had awakened in the early hours of the morning teary-eyed and screaming. When he had finally gotten her calmed down, she had latched herself to Ichigo as tightly as she could, quietly crying and apologizing until she had fallen back asleep. The next morning, she had acted like it had never happened, leaving a highly confused Ichigo. There had been more nights like that, and instead of repeatedly asking her what was wrong, he had been forced to silently support her as best he could. He couldn't say that he didn't understand. Ichigo was more than aware of the terrors that one's subconscious could bring, thus he didn't pressure Yoruichi about it. Remembering his own nightmares and dreams, he had resolved to simply be a comforting presence for her, and if she felt ready to open up, he would be ready. Speaking of fruitless endeavors, Ichigo had quickly found that he had not really considered the logistics and needed secrecy of actually going on the visit to the human world to talk to his father. All he knew was that he wanted to go ask the old goat about the possibility of actually proposing to Yoruichi, as well as what he could possibly expect from her clan. Sure, his old man wasn't a noble or anything, but talking to him couldn't hurt as he had been married himself and a captain in Soul Society. With the questions always plaguing his consciousness, Ichigo had planned to leave as soon as possible after they had reunited. What he hadn't planned on was explaining not only the need for him to make a multi-day trip to the world of the living, but also why he didn't want Yoruichi coming with him. Having forgotten that she had been the leader of the Onmitsukido, a squad specializing in information gathering, Ichigo had had to think quickly to come up with an excuse that could keep Yoruichi in the dark about his actual plans, and him out of an overheated sparring session. Luckily, he had remembered the date and was able to claim that he was going to spend some time with his family for his twin sister's birthday. It had earned a raised eyebrow from Yoruichi, but fortunately she didn't press the issue. Chuckling at how he had almost blown it, Ichigo was slightly nervous as he laid there in the bed. Actually, he had been nervous ever since he had decided that he was going to the living world on his mission. He was supposed to leave for there first thing in the morning, and knew that he would most likely be coming back to make a controversial proposal to the woman he loved more than anything. However, doubts began to form as to how it would be received by Yoruichi. I've been so worried about her clan's reaction, but what about hers? What if she says no? I know that she loves me, but what if she decides that she doesn't want to marry me? She could decide that it's not worth the problems that it could cause with her clan. Ichigo shook his head to try and clear his thoughts. Worrying was not going to get him anywhere. He was sure that Yoruichi was the one with whom he wanted to be for the rest of his existence. It wasn't a debate, nor a question, simply fact, and he decided to trust in her love for him. Though he was going to do everything possible to make sure it was accepted by her clan, he was not going to be held back by fear any longer. It had robbed him of so much time with Yoruichi, and he would never allow that again. Yeah, I have to worry more about the old man's antics before I can worry about anything else. Kami knows how long he'll spend crying in front of that poster after this bombshell. Internally rolling his eyes at what he knew would be a scene, Ichigo began to think on how he would actually ask the question, when the door to the room opened. Yoruichi was smiling as she showered. This morning had been, sweet Kami, so damn good. She had woken up and quickly gotten into a rather excited mood. It was hard not to, actually. Every night she fell asleep with the man she dearly loved holding her and lightly running his fingertips over her skin, followed by being awakened by Ichigo's intoxicating scent and muscular body entwined with hers in the morning. Of course, every morning had not always played out like this. Ever since that horrible night in which Ichigo had found her hidden room and the secret within, Yoruichi had been having vivid nightmares. The content was almost always the same, recollections of her last experiences with her Zanpakuto, which of course led to the surfacing of more, painfully related memories that she had buried deep in her subconscious. She had not been brave enough to communicate with it yet. After more than a century of no interaction at all, Yoruichi knew that she was going to have an intense, and likely incredibly painful reunion with her Zanpakuto coming. However, with the specific memories that had been uncovered, she simply couldn't face it just yet and had hidden it once again. Yoruichi hated that she couldn't fight the memories. She was developing a new appreciation of what Ichigo had gone through with his, as she discovered that it was impossible to escape one's past. The memories had caught her unprepared, and she was having a difficult time keeping them at bay during her time awake. Though she was quite agitated from having these nightmares, she had to admit that Ichigo had been incredibly supportive. It would have been all too easy for him to pressure her into talking about why she sometimes woke up crying or screaming, however he would simply hold her and stroke her hair, telling her everything would be just fine and always that he loved her. Yoruichi smiled again. Ichigo really had been amazing ever since the romantic night he had set up for her. That night's setup had been the sweetest and most romantic thing she had ever experienced, and she made sure to aptly reward him. She pushed her negative thoughts away and her smile became mischievous as she remembered, rewarding Ichigo. Yoruichi had made it her mission to try and catch him by surprise, and quite often succeeded. His mood had always seemed much brighter after he was rewarded, in places like his office desk, their sparring grounds, meadows in the outlying Rukongai, and more. Though he had been acting amazing and incredibly supportive, Yoruichi had been concerned when Ichigo had suddenly announced that he was going to the world of the living. She hadn't been surprised that he wanted to see his family, but that he had simply come up with the idea out of the blue shortly after they had come back together, and she was sure he had tried his version of subtlety, said that he would be making the trip by himself to visit his sisters for their birthday. Normally, she wouldn't have a problem with this. She was not overbearing and trusted Ichigo. However, there had been a noticeable change in his behavior immediately following his announcement. Yoruichi would notice him occasionally lost in thought, seeming nervous and slightly stressed. He would also tense up and stutter whenever his trip was brought up. When she had asked him about it, he just brushed it off, saying that he was thinking about training regiments for his squad or some other obvious excuse. Still thinking as she got out of the shower and wrapped herself in a towel, Yoruichi frowned. She knew that he wouldn't lie to her for no reason, but she didn't like the idea of him keeping things from her. Kind of like you not telling him why you wake up crying, she thought. Sighing as she reached for her room's door handle, she knew that she had to cut Ichigo some slack. Yoruichi had decided to trust him and believe that he would never lie to her about something detrimental to them, and she was going to stick to it. However, her decision about cutting him some slack was tested the moment she stepped into the room. Ichigo Kurosaki, what are you still doing in bed? I told you to get up and get ready. If you aren't dressed and ready by the time I am, I swear that I will drag your ass there naked. Sitting up in the bed, Ichigo blanched. He knew well that Yoruichi would follow through on her threat if he pissed her off enough, so he wisely hopped out from under the covers. Geez, I'm up. Didn't know that this was such a big deal for you, Lady Shihoin, Ichigo jabbed as he gathered his clothes to put on after his shower. Ow! He yelled as he felt a hand smack his head. Rubbing it, he turned to see a narrowed-eyed Yoruichi who didn't look even slightly amused. We are not going to go over this again. You were invited to my family's fall gala event, and you will be going. Now, get your ass in the shower before I get out of my good mood. Flashing up to her, Ichigo quickly kissed her cheek, whispering, of course, Yoruichi-sama, and flashing out of the room before she could smack him again. As Ichigo got out of the shower, he quickly dressed and made it back to his room. However, he was not expecting who he ran into. Walking into the room, he saw a head of midnight blue hair attached to the person looking in his closet, going through his clothes. Turning, he was surprised to see Amaya Shihoin smiling up at him. "Your wardrobe is woefully slim, Ichigo-kun." Lady Shihoin, what are you doing here?" he stammered. Oh, busted. Though he and Yoruichi had told her parents about their relationship in confidence, Ichigo didn't think that they were aware of the fact that they shared a bed. "Oh Ichigo-kun, I told you to call me Amaya. And I'm here for Yoruichi's sake. I know that she's had a hard time these last few weeks, and I've come to help her cheer up." Okay," Ichigo said, thoroughly confused. "That's great that you want to cheer her up, but why would that bring you here?" "You mean, why would I come to the room that my daughter shares with the man she loves to cheer her up?" she asked with a knowing smirk. As she saw Ichigo's eyes bulge and him starting to stammer and stutter, she decided to be merciful. "Ichigo, relax. I know that you two share a room and share a bed. I'm not worried about that. To be honest, I'd be worried for both of your hormones if you weren't. You two are so clearly in love that it's scary. No, I came here with a present that looks like it's for you, but it's really for her." As she finished, she motioned to a garment bag on Ichigo's bed. Walking over to it, she unzipped it and held out a long kimono that was the same color as her hair. "Yoruichi may not have told you, but this color is one of her absolute favorites. This is just a little treat for her, based on the one that she had made for you. Now, this isn't the only present for her. Listen closely." Yoruichi was waiting in an office in the mansion rather impatiently. Her mother had inexplicably showed up in her room with a garment bag telling her to go downstairs and wait for her before she left. What the hell were the clothes for? And why did she tell me to leave? It's my damn room. I mean, I know she knows that Ichigo sleeps with me. What's she up to? Her thoughts were halted as Ichigo entered the room. Sweet Kami. Yoruichi's eyes were wide and her mouth felt dry as she watched him walk towards her. He was wearing a midnight blue kimono that was tightly fitted on his muscled frame. As with his other one, this kimono closely resembled his Bankai attire. While not as deeply cut in the chest, she noticed that the jacket of it gave a slight view of the muscled chest underneath. "Ichigo, you look," she couldn't finish, as she had shunpioed over to him and yanked him into a searing kiss. Ichigo was similarly pleased. Yoruichi was in another fine purple kimono, and looking as beautiful as ever. Her reaction to him was very ego-boosting, and he wrapped his arms tightly around her, returning the kiss. "You know, you really are an incredibly lucky man to be able to kiss someone of Yoruichi-sama's quality and stature," a flat voice cut in, startling Ichigo. Turning towards the doorway, his eyes widened as he said, "Soi Fon." The newly arrived, petite captain rolled her eyes at the question he asked while he was looking at her. "Who else would it be?" "Yes, Kurosaki, that is my name. Any other bright questions?" she scoffed. "What does Yoruichi-sama see in him? He may have the power of a transcendent, but he has the brain of one of those morons in Squad 11. "Oh shut up, I was just surprised to see you back from your mission, as well as in Yoruichi's house." "What are you doing here, anyways?" Ichigo asked in annoyance. Ever since she had learned that Ichigo often stayed at the Shihoin mansion, Soi Fon had been less than thrilled with him. He easily guessed what the issue was, as he was in a romantic relationship with her idol, but it was moments like this in which it really manifested itself. Their arguments were not frequent, and never overly heated, more like his bickering back and forth with Rukia. Yoruichi intervened this time, sighing and pinching the bridge of her nose as she said, "Can't you two ever just get along? You both give me a headache." "Ichigo, she is here as a favor to me." "Oh, what kind of favor?" he asked in a deadpan voice. Frowning, Yoruichi replied in an accusing tone, "Well, I knew you would try to get out of going to this event. I know this because you don't even have a date to it, as was requested in the invitation. You're always difficult when it comes to going to these things. Who the hell am I supposed to go with? Rukia is attending with Byakuya, and you can't show up with a commoner," Ichigo said, frustrated. Not only did he have to go to and mingle with nobility, but he had to watch Yoruichi be fawned over yet again, as well as dozens of men wanting to dance with her. The thought of them putting their hands on her had always made his blood boil. Yoruichi's eyes narrowed in annoyance. You could have asked Rukia to help you find a suitable date for tonight. I know you don't like these things, but you could at least try. You don't have to let your jealousy over the efforts of suitors ruin nights like this. She wasn't any happier about the situation herself. Every time there was an event, she would have to passively endure scores of women fawning over and rubbing up against her Ichigo. However, she wasn't going to admit to that now, as mentioning jealousy was helpful to her argument. Was it petty? Yes. Did she care at this moment? Not even slightly. She was frustrated by his difficulty, which was magnified into an actual problem because she was really quite frustrated by the fact that she would not see him for several days. Add that to the fact that she still couldn't figure out why he had been acting strangely whenever his trip was mentioned, as well as her seemingly never-ending struggle with her nightmares and the content therein, and Yoruichi found herself to be a bit on the aggravated side of things. They frequently had these mini-arguments before parties and galas. Neither was truly angry, however, when they were in a situation in which they had to publicly act like they were simply friends and watch as random men and women tried to garner the other's attention, which happened quite a bit for both, they tended to get irritable. Ichigo had just reached that point, and unfortunately for him, he tended to say rather stupid things at this stage. So I am the one with the jealousy problem now, not going to mention the one who literally growls when other females get too close to me. Before he could think of the ramifications of his words, he blurted out, "You're right, I shouldn't worry about who I ask. I guess I should have taken Rangaku's invitation to be her date after all." Though a brave warrior, Ichigo thought that he was done for as he saw Yoruichi's eyes flash dangerously. However, he became even more nervous as she quickly donned a mischievous smirk and fake sweet voice. "Oh, don't worry, my berry-headed love. I took the liberty of finding a date for you. This is why Soi Fon is here. She agreed to be your chaperone. I mean date for the night as a favor to me. She's someone who could keep those bitches off of you, plus I really want you two to get along. Hopefully a night where you both have to be civil could help." "What?" Ichigo asked. Yoruichi had recruited her biggest suck-up to babysit him. He knew that her slip-up was quite intentional, and that she was going for a reaction. Oh hell no. Amaya's plan is going to be so much fun now. "Yes, Kurosaki, you will be attending the gala with me. Is being in my company a problem for you?" Soi Fon asked, eyebrow raised. Shifting his attention and rolling his eyes, he said, "Not when you're actually being pleasant. However, for some strange reason I don't think that I will get to see that side of you." Expecting her reaction to be a shout or direct insult, Ichigo was surprised when she sighed and answered, "We shall see, Kurosaki. Who knows, maybe you can try to convince me that Lady Yoruichi did not make such a terrible mistake in choosing you. It's clear that our arguing is wearing Yoruichi-sama's patience thin. She will be very unhappy if we keep this fighting up." Ichigo chuckled, his annoyance receding. That not-so-subtle insult was the nicest thing she'd said to him since he'd known her, which was clearly her way of trying to be peaceful, and he decided to take what he could get. Also, he knew that it wouldn't hurt to have Yoruichi's #1 fan on his side, especially with what he was planning to ask her as soon as he got back from his trip, so he decided to give peace a try. "I don't know how I could ever convince you of that, Soi Fon, but I'll give it a shot." Finally, an exasperated-sounding Yoruichi said, "Now, can I have a moment with him, Soi Fon? We'll be out in a few minutes." The small Taiko briefly nodded and stepped out of the room. The moment she left and shut the door, Yoruichi flashed in front of Ichigo, pulling him into a tight embrace and another searing kiss. "You could try the patience of a brick wall, Ichigo Kurosaki," she growled as they separated, foreheads touching. Smirking, he replied, "Would you really want me any other way? Look, I'm sorry, okay. These nights are tough to deal with. It's maddening to watch all of those assholes trying to paw at you and take you away from me. I want to be the one standing with you, showing everyone how proud I am to have the love of the most beautiful woman in any dimension." "Wow, you really are trying to get on my good side, aren't you?" Yoruichi replied with a smirk of her own. Though he had the ability to test her nerves like no other, he was also the one with the quickest access to her smile. "Of course, Yoruichi-sama," he said with a grin. Lightly kissing him once more, she sighed, well, it is time for me to go finish preparing. You will be accompanying Soi Fon, so you two can stay here and try to get along. I won't actually see you again until we are there. Okay, Ichigo said softly as he held her. Just make sure to save a few dances for me, he finished with a sweet kiss to her cheek, to which she smiled and nodded. Both now smiling, they walked out of the door hand in hand, only to encounter Soi Fon standing there with Amaya, both looking like they had just finished a conversation of their own. Okay lovebirds, I need to take Yoruichi to get her fully prepared. Ichigo, why don't you and Soi Fon take a stroll through the gardens before the gala? You two look as if you could use some warming up to each other, Amaya exclaimed. A little stunned, Ichigo simply nodded, letting go of Yoruichi's hand. He slightly blushed at the looks he got when Yoruichi quickly kissed his cheek and disappeared towards her room. Amaya smiled widely and winked at him before disappearing as well, while Soi Fon simply stood there with a raised brow. I guess let's go to the gardens, Ichigo muttered. Soi Fon only nodded, and began walking with him. After several minutes of awkward silence in the garden, Soi Fon spoke, Yoruichi-sama thinks quite highly of you, Kurosaki. Thanks. Ichigo muttered, not really knowing how to respond to that. He had never been good at forced conversation, and was simply working on not sounding too stupid. Seeing her stop walking, Ichigo stopped as well and turned towards the smaller captain. She had an expression that was something between curiosity and a glare. What exactly are your feelings and intentions towards Yoruichi-sama? You sleep in her bed, and she spends most of her time with you. I have not seen you so familiar with any other woman, however I do not know your thoughts. What is this, some sort of inquisition or test? This is between Yoruichi and myself, no matter how much she likes her idol. It's not actually any of your, Ichigo began before he was cut off. It is my business, actually. Yoruichi-sama has been closer to me than family for longer than you've been alive. She has been a friend, mentor and more. I care a great deal for her, and will not allow her heart to be trifled with or broken again by anyone. So again I ask, what are your feelings and intentions towards Lady Yoruichi? Focused more on ending her questions than what she had actually just said, Ichigo began, Soi Fon, I know you care about her, but what you're asking is between Yoruichi and myself. I get that you're looking out for her, but do you truly love her? The dark-haired Taiko snapped. She was getting tired of the evasions, and luckily she knew that angering him was the quickest way to get him to express himself. It is clear that Yoruichi-sama is in love with you. I have never seen her this way, even before. But what about you? Is this just a fling for you? I won't stand for anyone using her, even you. She may. Don't you dare call what she and I have a fling, Ichigo snarled, his peaceful demeanor gone. I would never even consider using her. She is everything to me, and I love her more than my own life. His reaction may have been a little over the top, but Ichigo would be damned if he let someone question the integrity of his relationship with Yoruichi. He truly did love her more than his own life, and though few knew about it, those who did would be clear on his feelings. Blinking up at him, Soi Fon simply sighed and said, very well. I suppose that will have to do. Do not think that I won't be watching, though, just because I believe what you are telling me now. Now come on, we have things to cover before it's time for the gala. As she finished, she turned and began to walk away towards the center of the garden. What the hell, did I just get approved? Ichigo couldn't help but chuckle. Again, he knew that Soi Fon's stamp of approval, while not vital, couldn't hurt. As he walked to catch up, he began to grin at the thought of how tonight would go. Amaya had given him some great ideas, and he couldn't wait to see Yoruichi's reaction. Yoruichi was frustrated, quite frustrated. The incredibly crowded gala had been in full swing for several hours, but she really hadn't been expecting things to go as they had tonight. For starters, the suitors that were at the party were much more aggressive than usual. Well, she thought that, however she conceded that it could be her perception due to the fact that she was constantly trying to see where Ichigo was, and they would constantly interrupt that search. Adding to her frustrations, it seemed that the female population had been quite aggressive tonight as well. Every time she actually did see Ichigo or meet his gaze, he was either surrounded by a gaggle of women, or being dragged off to dance with them. Soi Fon was doing her best, but it was clear that she couldn't exactly try and intimidate every woman who tried to claim Ichigo's attention. She had had a few dances with Ichigo, thus introducing what was her greatest frustration. Ichigo had suddenly become an incredibly effective tease. Every time they danced, Ichigo would always push the limits of secrecy, holding her just far enough away for others to remain clueless, yet close enough for his scent to flood her senses. He would often whisper sweetly into her ear, lightly breathing on her skin and clutching her tighter. Every touch, every smell, every whisper was driving her mad with want, and was only exacerbated by the obvious desire and longing that she saw in his own eyes. The worst part of it was when they weren't even dancing partners. Ichigo would often bring her drinks, his fingers covertly brushing hers every time while making brief, but intense eye contact. Every time he would pass by her in the crowded room, he would, accidentally, brush his body against hers hips, arms, shoulders, all of it being incredibly effective in making Yoruichi's blood pound and sing at the touches and subtle smirks he would give her when apologizing. As she was mingling with some of the nobles she had known for a while, her flustered thoughts strayed. How the hell did he get so damn good at teasing? I swear, I'm having to fight jumping him right here in front of the whole fucking Seraiti. Dear Kami, that kimono, his scent, the look in his eyes when he touches me, when he touches me. Yoruichi squirmed slightly as she recalled his lingering touches and the way his hips rubbed against hers when he would, accidentally, bump into her. Gah. Her mind shot into crystal clarity though as she looked across the room and met the smirking gaze of the man she loved standing near a doorway that connected to a corridor. Mother, she thought, realizing what had occurred to give Ichigo such a boost in his teasing abilities. This is what she wanted when she sent me down to the office this morning. Figures, Ichigo learns everything faster than possible. Oh, I'm going to wear him out tonight. Looking back up, she felt the need to squirm arise again as Ichigo was still staring. The smirk was gone as she could clearly read the sheer want on his face. Making sure she had his attention, Yoruichi made her way towards the doorway that he was standing by. Cutting him one last blazing look, she quickly slipped through the crowd and into the hallway unnoticed by anyone but Ichigo. Ichigo was on cloud 9. The pointers that Amaya had given him this morning, and help Soi Fon had provided had been pure gold. He knew Yoruichi's expressions and body language, and what he was doing was working. Flashback. Stopping in the center of the garden, Soi Fon turned and faced Ichigo. I understand that Amaya-sama has given you directions for this evening. She requested my help in this effort. What do you mean? Ichigo asked. Amaya had given him plenty of instructions and tips on how to flirt with Yoruichi in a way that would drive her crazy. He didn't want to be rude, but Soi Fon was the last person he would think to come to for help with anything romantic. While it seems that Amaya-sama has provided you with assistance in your more romantic endeavors, I am to assist you in actually carrying them out in an environment such as a gala. You clearly have no stealth training, but it is something that would benefit you greatly in both gaining Yoruichi-sama's attention and avoiding the notice of those around you, the smaller captain said. Ichigo realized she had a point. He was fast, he was strong, he was powerful, but the one thing he wasn't was stealthy. Thinking back on what Amaya had told him, he realized that while it would be effective on Yoruichi, he wasn't sure he could pull it off without others seeing. Sighing, he agreed, fine, I see your point. What did you have in mind? Turning to face her fully as she had slightly turned away he said, do you really think I can? Oof. Looking down, he saw Soi Fon standing there beside him looking innocently up at him as he grabbed his ribs. What the hell? I am training you to use stealth in your movements. Use one movement to cover another. I said I would help you learn to move without being noticed, not that it would be fun for you, she said with a small grin as she observed his angry scowl. This might be fun after all. Flashback end. The gala had been torture at first, as the suitors seemed determined to keep him away from Yoruichi. Every time he had tried to get close and speak to her, 2 or 3 different men would cut in front, claiming her attention. Getting frustrated, it took the annoyed words of his date to get him back into the fight. If you can't get in there to simply talk to her, Give yourself an excuse to get through them, Soi Fon said as she handed Ichigo a second drink. Take this to her, and if you come back without having made her smile, I will kick your ass. With a big smile, he had edged through the sycophantic peacocks. A drink for you, Yoruichi-sama. Her wide eyes, as he lightly brushed her fingers, made Ichigo want to smile even wider. However, he lightly whispered, I love you, into her ear and left to rejoin his date until he could get back by and tease her again. This had continued all night. When they danced, when he brought her drinks, when he would, accidentally, brush against her body, and more, Ichigo would always give teasing glances and smirks and would revel in the clear frustration in her eyes. However, the enjoyment changed towards the end of the night. After being so close to her, basking in her scent, feeling her warm body, Ichigo was now feeling the same effects that he had been trying to cause in Yoruichi. He knew that he wouldn't see her for several days after tonight, and his stomach clenched deliciously as he made eye contact with her from across the room. He couldn't smirk anymore, though. He craved her too much, hungered for her too badly. She was the woman he was wanting to marry, to spend the rest of his life with, and she was staring at him in a way that made him want to steal her away from this crowd and make love to her until he couldn't move. When she started moving towards him, his heart quickened. Though she was watching where she was going, her golden eyes always found their way back to his. His heart was crashing in his chest as she got closer, and his mouth went dry as she made eye contact one last time, flicking them quickly towards the door in a clear message, hallway, now. Walking out into the low-lit hallway, Ichigo turned and followed the faint reiatsu she was releasing. He continued on for a moment before he felt a pair of hands roughly drag him into a small alcove to his right. Before he could speak, he briefly saw a pair of hungry golden eyes before a pair of lips crashed into his own. This kiss was similar to the ones she gave him shortly after they had made up. He could feel a deep, almost primal need emanating from her. She seemed to be unable to decide whether she wanted her hands in his hair or roaming and gripping his body, as she constantly switched between the two. After several moments of feverish, passionate kissing, they broke apart, breathing heavily. Resting her forehead against Ichigo's, Yoruichi tightly gripped the cloth of his top as she breathed, Kami, the things you do to me. I thought I was the one who was supposed to be good at teasing. You've been driving me crazy all night. The feeling is mutual, Ichigo breathed huskily, gripping her tightly. Unable to stop himself, he growled lowly and started kissing Yoruichi's neck. One hand moved up to tangle in her hair while the other gripped her rear as he switched between warm, wet kisses and lightly biting her neck. The soft moans she was trying to hold in were driving him mad. He was surprised for a moment as he felt her hands push against his chest, however he quickly realized why. Knowing that she was going to stop them before things got too far, he gave her neck one last wet kiss before straightening himself and looking at her. His surprise returned as she was looking at him with pure, undiluted want. He was about to take a step back to let her gather herself when she grabbed his top again, pulling him against her and backing up to the wall. His heart began to pound furiously when her hands moved to the rim of his pants and she leaned up to his ear to lustily whisper, "Take me." Yoruichi needed her man. She needed him now. The touches and teases of tonight, the frustration of her not being able to see him for the next few days, the frustrations of her memories fighting back to the surface and confusing her present. All of it. It was infuriating, and she needed the constant in her life. She craved his touch, their bond. Her wish came true just a moment later as Ichigo moaned lowly in response and picked her up, sliding her kimono up her thighs and pinning her to the wall with his hips. After he made a small adjustment, she had to bite the cloth on his shoulder to stop her moan as she felt him fill her completely. When she looked up again, he kissed her deeply, catching her moans in his mouth. Yoruichi, I love you. Kami, I love you so much, Ichigo said, his voice slightly carrying in the hallway. I love you so much that I am going to offer you the rest of my existence, somehow. I've never wanted anything so much in my life. Maybe the old man can help, maybe not. I don't care what obstacles I have to overcome, I will do anything necessary. Meeting his gaze, she smiled as she returned the sentiment. I love you too, my Ichigo. After a moment, when they had caught their breath, Ichigo slowly lowered Yoruichi to the floor. Reverting back to his playful antics and grinning like a kid, Ichigo winked and whispered, so I guess this means that I finally got a win in teasing. Raising an eyebrow as she fixed her hair and smoothed her kimono, Yoruichi replied, yes, it would seem that you take well to my mother's training. She laughed lightly as she could see his blush even in the darkened hallway. Deciding to give him a break, she leaned up to his ear and whispered, you drove me crazy. It seems that you're a natural at just about everything. She wanted to laugh again as she saw his face again brighten with a grin, and they started walking. Okay, Ego Berry, let's get back to the gala before someone starts looking for us, Yoruichi said while rolling her eyes. Turning to face him again, she gave him a quick, heated kiss before smirking and telling him, and you better save your energy. I am going to have to be without you for several days while you're gone, so I am going to make sure I get my fill of you tonight. Ichigo grinned widely, kissing her back and said, then I'll make sure it's memorable. They both smiled mischievously as they made their way back to the main room. They hadn't noticed him. Hiding in the shadows, the man watched the two lovers as they nearly attacked each other. My, how interesting, he thought as he watched the young, orange-haired captain pick up the Shihoin princess and pin her to the wall with his hips. The hidden man rubbed his wrist, glad of the Reiatsu signature concealing device he was wearing. It had been a few years since he'd been active in the Onmitsukido, and he couldn't risk exposure. He had been trying for quite a while to gather dirt to use against the individuals he was witnessing. It had been rather difficult as one was an overpowered war hero, while the other was the former head of the Onmitsukido. However, he hadn't considered the possibility of getting information on them. He rolled his eyes at the scene before him, not actually surprised that the Shihoin whore princess had found herself a commoner boy toy. It was something to work with, but his plan needed something else. I need more than this. Nobody will really give a shit if she's fucking the war hero. Still, I'm sure I can find a way to use this. He watched the two for a few moments more, hoping to catch something of value. Hearing nothing, he was about to slip away when the couple slowed and he heard the boy say, Yoruichi. I love you, Kami, I love you so much. Instantly peeking up, the man returned to his shadow. What? The tainted commoner is in love with the... His thoughts were cut off as he heard Yoruichi reply, I love you too, my Ichigo. My Ichigo. Well, Yoruichi Shihoin, this is quite the development. The man's mind was running into overdrive as he processed the information. The soon-to-be Shihoin clan leader was in love with a part hollow boy. This could prove to be very useful, or disastrous. The boy had a glowing reputation with the clan council, and could actually make them pause if he sought marriage, because he obviously made her happy. He frowned. Something was bothering him. Something he felt that he should be remembering. Something important. Of course, the report I received several weeks ago. She had been described as depressed ever since my team reported her taking a wakizashi away from the mansion. It must be her zanpakuto. If that's the case. A wide grin spread across the man's face. He still received covert reports and certain updates about Onmitsukido affairs, and this week he had received a bit of news that he now knew was simply perfect. He had recently been reminded of a story about that zanpakuto. It had been shortly after her exile, when she had. His thoughts were cut off again as he heard the two lovers talking again. Yes, it would seem that you take well to my mother's training. Her mother knows about this. You sneaky little bitch, trying to ease him in under the clan's noses. This could be perfect. Still, I need a little time to make this work. Still listening, he perked once more when he heard, I am going to have to be without you for several days while you're gone, so I am going to make sure I get my fill of you tonight. He's going to be gone. Haha, this couldn't get better, could it? This turned out far better than I could have ever planned. Yoruichi Shihoin and Ichigo Kurosaki, thank you for giving me what I need to break you. As the two lovers walked obliviously by his shadowy hiding place, Kato couldn't contain his devious smile. He now had all he needed to devastate the annoying hollow bastard and control the next clan leader. Ichigo awoke early the next morning, amazed that he could still move. The night before had been. Damn, I had no idea that my teasing would be so effective. Yoruichi had been more than eager to return to their room in the mansion and pick up where they had left off in the hallway. He shook his head and smiled at the sleeping woman beside him. Today was the day. The day he would talk to his father and find some way, any way, to marry Yoruichi. He had no idea how it would work, but he knew that he hadn't gotten to where he was and survived what he had by believing in impossibilities, or he had to admit having well thought out plans. Rolling out of bed, Ichigo was putting his clothes on when he heard Yoruichi stir. Morning handsome. You sure can help a girl get a good night's sleep. Now dressed, Ichigo chuckled and walked back to the bed. I could say the same to you, beautiful. My little kitten is quite insatiable. Yoruichi smiled sleepily at him. Her smile dimmed, though, as she sighed and quietly asked, do you really have to go? Ichigo sighed as well. He did not enjoy the idea of being away from Yoruichi for any amount of time, however this trip was incredibly important, and he couldn't delay it. Not only that, but he owed it to his sisters to be there for their birthday. I do. Don't worry, it's only for a few days. What kind of brother would I be if I missed my little sister's birthday? I'll be coming back to you quickly, though, Ichigo said. Yoruichi couldn't help but be disappointed. She was quite unhappy to be without Ichigo for several days, however she knew she couldn't be selfish. Having met Ichigo's adorable sisters, she knew that it would break their hearts to not have their brother see them on their birthday. Sighing, she said, then hurry up and go so you can be back sooner. Ichigo smiled. He quickly leaned down and planted a gentle kiss on her lips, saying, I'll be back before you know it. I love you. I love you too, Yoruichi said just before Ichigo shunpioed off. At Urahara's shop, as Isshin stood in the underground training facility of the small candy shop, he thought back on his recent conversations with Ichigo and Kazuki. The scientist had told the elder Kurosaki about his conversation with Ichigo concerning marriage, and to be expecting to hear from the boys soon. Sure enough, only a few weeks pass and Ichigo messages him saying that he'll be coming back for the girl's birthday and that he wanted to talk to him about some things. Isshin chuckled. That boy can't do anything slowly. Whether it's achieving Bankai or wanting to propose, he's always got a fire under his ass. This is going to be an interesting conversation, but I'm sticking with just one revelation this time. Any more and his head would probably explode. I just hope I'm still alive to give him the good news. He was actually somewhat excited to be able to share this with his son. Not only would he be able to give him news that will help his son in his hopes to marry the woman of his dreams, but he also would be able to introduce Ichigo to family there in Soul Society. He hadn't ever really had a chance to tell Ichigo about his heritage or his thoughts trailed off as the reason he could only hope to be alive could be heard in the cavernous underground. Kazuki, you better have a good reason for dragging my ass here. We've got better things to do than to run around the realms for your schemes, an aggressive female voice called out. Turning towards the noise, Isshin waited behind a small cropping of rocks to announce his presence until they were in view. Schemes? Urahara cried in fake surprise. I never scheme. I simply have something that I really think you would be interested in seeing. Then why the hell did I have to come? You could have just asked for sis, here, instead of me. Ow! A gruff male voice said. Shut up. Now, what the hell is this about kiss? The female voice cut off as the group came around the edge of the cropping. Isshin wanted to laugh as Kukaku and Ganju Shiba froze, standing there staring at him with their mouths hanging open. Before he could speak, Kukaku broke the silence. Uncle Isshin? She asked quietly, her voice sounding as if it could break at any moment. Isshin couldn't help but to feel guilty. He had left them thinking that he was dead for decades, and to suddenly spring the fact that he was alive on them was going to be tough. So, in typical Isshin form, he greeted them. Kukaku, Ganju, it's so good to see you. Your wonderful, handsome uncle is, Isshin bellowed as he ran towards them with his arms stretched wide. His enthusiasm was quickly dashed as Kukaku raised a foot and planted it into his face. She continued raising her foot and stomping on Isshin as she bellowed at him. You son of a bitch. You've been alive all this time and couldn't tell me. W.E. stomp thought stomp you stomp were stomp dead, stomp stomp stomp. Don't kill him, sis, Ganju yelled at her, pulling her off of him. He was thrilled to see his uncle. Yes, he was a little pissed about the deception, but seeing that he and Kukaku were not all that was left of his family made it all worth it. However, if his sister kept beating the man, they would be all that's left after all. The enraged Shiba was not ready to let Isshin off so easily. The three men in the area all cringed as her left arm became engulfed in bright orange keto flames. Turning back to Isshin, she punched the ground hard, causing the keto to leap towards him. Isshin tried to run, to escape the blast, however it quickly caught him, blasting him up high into the air. Standing next to Ganju, Urahara commented behind his fan, "It seems our lovely Kakaku has lost none of her enthusiasm." Ganju merely grunted and face-palmed. They had just discovered their long-lost uncle was alive, and now his crazy sister was actually going to kill him. As he slammed into the ground, Isshin coughed and groaned. "Damn, that woman still packs one hell of a punch." Getting to his feet, he was somewhat surprised as he felt himself being hugged. Looking down, he saw Kukaku now with her arm around him and a few tears finding their way down her cheeks. "I missed you guys too," he said softly as he hugged her back. After a few moments, Kukaku released him. As she was drying her eyes, he spoke again, saying, "So I'm sure you guys have some questions, right?" The deadpan look that they gave him spoke volumes. However, both expressions quickly switched to annoyed at the question. Speaking up, Kukaku asked, "How are you still alive? Even if you had wanted to hide, for whatever reason, it seems hard to believe that a Shiba could just completely disappear. Seriously, not even Kai." She paused, grimacing. It still hurt her to mention him. Though it had been a couple of years since Kaian had died, the wound was still sore. Isshin saw the look, and knew what was going on. Kazuki had explained what had happened shortly after it had, and he felt guilty for not being there to help his family through their loss. Deciding to give them some good news, Isshin said, "It becomes a lot easier when you change your name. Some things happened. I lost my Shinigami powers, and ended up staying here and raising a family. I haven't gone by the name Shiba since I left. Now, I go by Isshin Kurosaki." The looks that quickly came upon Kukaku and Ganju's faces were priceless. "Kurosaki," Ganju began. "Does that mean that?" He was cut off as they detected another Senkaiman opening. Isshin quickly nodded and quietly said, "And it looks like your cousin just arrived." Ichigo was feeling irritable as he stepped out of the Senkaiman. While he was thrilled to be able to see his family, he was already missing Yoruichi. He smiled inwardly at how thoroughly she had become such a foundational part of his life, but frowned outwardly because he would be unable to see her for a few days. He sighed as he stepped on the ground of the training facility, however was quickly distracted as Urahara appeared in front of him. "Welcome, Kurosaki-san. It's been too long since you've visited my humble shop. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Raising an eyebrow at the theatrics, Ichigo said, "I'm here to see my old man and visit the twins for their birthday." "Good. Family is important, right? Luckily for you, your father is actually here at the moment. Follow me." Saying nothing else, Kazuki turned and walked deeper into the training area. "Oyaji is here. What the hell is this about?" Ichigo thought as he reluctantly followed Urahara. As they rounded the edge of a cropping of rocks, Ichigo was stunned to see not only his dad in his Shinigami form, but Kukaku and Ganju Shiba as well. "Dad, what are you doing here? I guess I should ask the same for you guys as well," he asked as he turned to the Shibas. However, before he could continue, he paused at the looks on their faces. Both had wide eyes and slightly opened mouths. "What? Oof." Ichigo was cut off as a fist pummeled his head. "Why the hell haven't you been by even once since you got back to Soul Society?" Kukaku shouted. "All this time you've, OMF." She was quickly silenced as Isshin put his hand over her mouth. I haven't exactly told him about everything yet," Isshin said. He quickly retracted his hand and started talking quickly and loudly at the infuriated, deadly look on his niece's face. "I haven't really had a chance. That's actually what we're going to talk about now." Before she could hit him, Ichigo yelled, "What the hell are you all talking about? Haven't told me what?" This was too weird. His dad looked nervous, Ganju still looked annoyed, and Kukaku looked the same way she did when Ichigo first met her and broke her pipe. "Ichigo, I know you're here to talk to me, and I have a pretty good idea what it's about, but I have some stuff to tell you first. You might even find it helpful in what you want to talk about," Isshin said with a knowing look. "Okay," Ichigo replied. Putting the question of how his father seemed to know why he had really come on the back burner, he couldn't help the thrill of excitement he felt when his dad said it could be helpful in that pursuit. So you've found out that I am a Shinigami. Before I came to the world of the living, I was actually a captain in the Gote 13, which you also know. What you? Why did you come to the living world? Why aren't you still a captain? Ichigo asked, interrupting him. He knew he was getting off on a tangent, but the question had always vexed him. However, he was shocked at the dark look that came across his father's face. When I came here on a mission, I met your mother. Shortly after that, I lost my powers and, well, circumstances dictated that I stay here. Now is not the time to get into that. Anyways, what you don't know is that my name isn't actually Kurosaki. I actually took that name on when I came here, Isshin said, glad to avoid that particular story for the moment. Ichigo was feeling a little lost. He really wanted to press his father on the issue of how he had lost his powers and what those circumstances were, but the look on the man's face was enough to discourage that desire. Instead, he asked, what? If your name isn't Kurosaki, then what is it? Sighing, Isshin looked his son in the eye and said, Shiba. My real name is Isshin Shiba. Shiba, Shiba. Ichigo's mind was in overdrive. Looking over at the now grinning Kukaku and Ganju, his mind snapped into clarity. Wait, if it's Shiba, then that means that you guys are. Ah. He was cut off as he found his head smothered in a headlock by both Ganju and Kukaku. That means your family. We had no idea. Well, I mean, you look like. Ganju started before he trailed off, looking worriedly at Kukaku. Kukaku, however, was too happy to be upset. She had family. She loved her idiot brother, Ganju, but it was often lonely with just the two of them. Kyan and his wife had brought so much life into the family, and when they died, it was hard to deal with. But now she had more family. Smiling widely, Kukaku yelled, "You're one of us, kid. This means you've always got family nearby." Ichigo would have been smiling too, had his head not been covered by a pair of muscular Shiba arms. Escaping, he gasped for breath for a moment before realization struck. You've always got family nearby. Looking at his dad, his face quickly fell into a frown. I've had family nearby, all this time, and you just decided to never tell me, he growled. He was pissed. He understood the need for secrets, really, he did. But this was family. His dad knew how important family was to Ichigo, and he held this back. Well, I wouldn't put it that way, son. I mean, you have to understand. Oof. Isshin said as a flying foot caught him in the stomach, sending him tumbling across the dirt floor. Woo. Hell yeah, he's a Shiba, Kukaku shouted as she watched Ichigo give Isshin a pummeling comparable to the one that she had given him earlier. Meanwhile, Ganju was chuckling at the scene, agreeing with his sister's assessment. Further away, seeing Ichigo land near him with a furious look on his face, Isshin grinned as he got back to his feet. Does this mean you are challenging me for? Ah. Isshin groaned as he again tumbled across the dirt floor. The things I do for my family. I'm sure it's going to hit him at any moment. Ichigo had quickly struck again, tackling his father and wrestling him to the ground. You could have told me that I had family in Soul Society. What the hell is wrong with you? I could have. Ichigo froze, holding his dad by the lapels of his shihakusho as he noticed Kukaku and Ganju walking up to them. Were Shibas. Shiba. Wait, Shiba. The Shibas were a noble clan. That means. Oyaji. Does this mean? Ichigo whispered. He couldn't speak any louder. Somehow, in his mind, Ichigo feared that if he said it too loud, or if he got too excited about this possibility, that it would disappear. He was part of a noble family. He came from nobility. Isshin had to fight a massive smile. His son just figured it out. Come on, Ichigo, say it. Ichigo finally found his voice. He had to seize the moment before fate screwed him again and his chance disappeared. Dad, I came here because I wanted to ask your advice. I want to ask Yoruichi to marry me. Now the smile spread on Isshin's face. It was a day that every parent dreamed of. His child, his son, had found the woman he loved, the woman that he wanted to marry and spend the rest of his life with. He didn't have to worry about whether or not Ichigo understood the gravity of what was happening. Ichigo was a man beyond his years, and he deserved this, his happiness. What? You're going to ask Yoruichi to marry you? Ichigo heard from the side. Turning from his dad, he saw Kakaku and Ganju standing there with yet another shocked expression. This one, however, quickly faded into a huge grin for Kakaku. Ha ha, my cousin is going to propose to my closest friend. You sure have grown up from that little punk that I met so long ago, she continued as a laughing Ganju put Ichigo back into a headlock. Standing back up, Isshin smiled at the scene before him. I'm glad to hear it, son. We can talk about it more tonight, but right now there are two girls who are chomping at the bit to see their Oni. Turning to his niece and nephew, Isshin continued, Ichigo is not your only cousin. You also have two spiritually aware twins, Karen and Yuzu, who will be able to see and talk to you. Tomorrow is their birthday, and I think that they would love to meet you. As he finished, he had to brace himself as both Ganju and Kakaku launched infuriated kicks at him. Ichigo sighed as he flopped down onto the couch in his family's house. The day had been non-stop from the moment he had stepped out of the Senkaiman. From finding out about his heritage, to brawling with his dad, to having his whole family in the same house and keeping up with the Shiba Kurosaki energy, Ichigo was exhausted. When he had first came through the door, Ichigo had been unprepared for his sister's excitement. Apparently, his father had been busy passing his crazy energy on to Yuzu and Karen, because as soon as he had shut the front door, he turned around to be tackled by a pair of squealing torpedoes. After a few minutes of hugs and shouted questions of just where their Oni had been, the girls allowed Ichigo to get to his feet as they noticed a pair of people they had never seen before. At that moment, Isshin sat them down and told them what he had told Ichigo. Kakaku and Ganju had introduced themselves to the girls, instantly adoring the young twins. That adoration had led to another rousing round of Isshin beating by all of the females present. Ichigo and Ganju had simply stood there laughing at the scene. After a while, the twins had decided that they were tired and ready for bed. They dragged Kakaku with them, as they were beyond thrilled to have a female relative and were not about to let her out of their sight. Ganju went upstairs, as he was staying in Ichigo's bed while Ichigo took the couch. As Ichigo was making the couch up for him to sleep on, Isshin came down the stairs. Woo, what a day. Quite a bit of excitement, Ichigo chuckled, yeah, you could say that. I still can't believe that I have family in Soul Society. Isshin rubbed the back of his head. I'm sorry about that, Ichigo. Sometimes, there are secrets that have been kept for so long that they're nigh impossible to draw out. But, as I said earlier, I believe that this makes things somewhat simpler for what you're wanting to do. Looking at his grinning father, Ichigo couldn't help but smile back. Yeah it does, Oyaji. I also wanted to thank you, for taking me seriously. I truly do love Yoruichi, and want to spend the rest of this and any other existence I'll ever have with her. I just hope she says yes. Not being able to help his widening eyes, Isshin smiled even bigger. Would you look at that? My boy truly found his love and happiness, with Yoruichi. Kami, I would pay to see the look on her face when he asks her. It's good that he's keeping nervous and humble about this. Reaching into his pocket, Isshin pulled out a box. Son, I can't tell you how proud I am. This is a moment I have always looked forward to. While we both wish that I didn't have this to give to you, I know that there is no greater symbol for you to present. Opening the small box, Ichigo saw a very shiny diamond ring nestled in it. Ichigo, this is the ring that I gave to your mother. I know that you would want you to start your new life with Yoruichi with her blessing, and trust me son, Masaki would be even more thrilled than I am for you to have this. Ichigo was floored by the gravity of what was happening. His father was giving him the ring that had been given to his mother. His eyes became warm and his throat felt thick as he looked at the ring. He couldn't take that, not his mother's ring. If the feelings that he had for Yoruichi were anything to go by, this ring was more precious to his father than anything in this world. Dad, I can't, Isshin held up a hand to stop him. Placing the small box into his son's hand, he said, son, don't overthink this. Your mother and I could not possibly be prouder, nor could we think of a better symbol for you to give to your future wife. However, there is a condition. If you give Yoruichi this ring, you are taking on a massive responsibility. You have to dedicate your entire life to making sure you are the husband, and eventually father, that Yoruichi deserves. You had better live up to the standard that this ring symbolizes." Ichigo didn't know what to say. Here he was, holding the beautiful ring that had belonged to his mother, the woman who would always be one of the guiding forces in his life, and was being encouraged to give that symbol to the woman he loved. Carefully closing the box, Ichigo then did something quite out of character for him. He hugged his dad. Surprised, Ishin embraced him back. It didn't last for long, but when Ichigo stepped back, he said, "Thank you, Dad. I will make sure I live up to the standard of this ring." The rest of Ichigo's time with his family was much the same. The rest of his family, including Kukaku and Ganju, were incredibly happy for Ichigo and wished him the best of luck. Yuzu and Karen had both cheered up and hugged him until his sides hurt. The best part had been Yuzu's tearful threat to Ichigo, saying that she would find a way to come to Soul Society and hunt him down if he didn't come back to visit soon with Yoruichi. When he and the Shiba siblings left a few days later, Ichigo could not wait to get back to Soul Society. He couldn't stop smiling, as Masaki's ring was burning a hole in his pocket, and he couldn't wait to hopefully slide it onto the finger of the love of his life. Amaya was enjoying her morning stroll in the gardens, ambling hand in hand with Takuya. Ever since they had married, they made an effort to spend time alone with each other every morning or evening, and walking their estate's gardens as they talked was one of her favorite ways to spend that time. Today's topic of conversation was one that had been occurring somewhat regularly since the appearance of a certain orange-haired Shinigami. Both parents had frequently commented on their daughter's relationship with the young captain since the boy had arrived in the Seraiti in Yoruichi's arms. These conversations had increased in frequency when the young couple had come to inform Takuya and Amaya of their relationship. The young man had looked so proud when he had told them that he loved their daughter. His promise to always protect her and treat her with the utmost respect had made Amaya actually want to swoon in delight, and even Takuya had been impressed. As they were walking and chatting, a servant came into the gardens, asking for their attention. "Pardon me, Lord and Lady Shihoin. I come with a request for an audience from Kurosaki Taiko. He is in the front parlor as we speak." Smiling, Amaya said, "Very well, please bring him out here to us." What could he want to meet with us for? After a brief nod of acknowledgement, the servant turned and left to collect the visitor. When he returned, Ichigo was right behind him, a nervous expression on his face as he fidgeted with his haori. "Good morning, Ichigo. How is my favorite Taiko this morning?" she called out, hoping to put his mind at ease from whatever it was that seemed to be troubling him. Coming to a stop before them, Ichigo stood stiffly, quickly bowing to both parents as he replied, "Good morning, Lady Shihoin, Lord Shihoin. I hope you are doing well today." Both parents chuckled at the formalities. Takuya replied politely, "We are, Ichigo. To what do we owe the pleasure of your visit this morning? It has been a few days since you have last been in Soul Society, no?" Takuya had to admit that he liked the boy. The young, fiery Shinigami reminded him so much of himself in his younger days. The young man's integrity and passion were also traits that made Takuya much more comfortable with the young man courting his precious daughter, not to mention the fact that he seemed to bring her such happiness. "It has," Ichigo answered. After fidgeting for a few more moments, he took a deep breath. "There was a specific reason for me to travel to both the world of the living and to your home this morning." Amaya began to get excited as she began to recognize the expressions on the boy's face and in his twitching hands. She remembered Yoruichi telling her how close she and Ichigo had become after their little spat, that Ichigo had gone alone to see his family for a few days, and that he had been acting strangely nervous when he had left. Being a bit of a romantic, she recognized that these were the same characteristics that Takuya had exhibited when he had proposed. She also remembered that Yoruichi had confided a small part of Ichigo's true heritage to her. Is he going to ask us to be able to propose to Yoruichi? Oh, if he does, I may just actually swoon. Amaya didn't care how girly her thoughts sounded at the moment. She was fighting the urge to giggle at how sweet it would be should that be the case. Deciding to hurry the conversation along so she could satiate her raging curiosity, Amaya asked, "And what would that specific reason be, Ichigo?" She watched as Ichigo gripped and released his hands several times, and as he took another deep breath. When he looked up, he made eye contact with them and said, I've come to ask your blessing in asking Yoruichi to marry me." Before either wide-eyed parent could react, he continued. "I was in the world of the living to ask my dad advice on the issue. I knew that I wasn't a noble and needed to know if it could ever be possible. At that point, my dad told me of my actual heritage." As Ichigo was catching his breath from the fast delivery of those words, Takuya asked the only question he could at the moment. "Your actual heritage?" "Yes, sir," Ichigo nodded. "Do you remember a man named Shiba?" Both Amaya's and Takuya's eyes widened further. He was the former head of the Shiba clan. It was said that he had died in the world of the living over 100 years ago. What about him? Rubbing what seemed to be a sore spot on the back of his head, Ichigo grimaced and said, "He is still very much alive. Yoruichi is actually good friends with him. He no longer uses the name Shiba, rather he goes by the name Isshin Kurosaki." "So you are," Amaya started, stunned as a man she thought was dead began walking up behind Ichigo. As all became aware of his presence, Ichigo watched as the three elders suddenly laughed and clasped hands. "Isshin, you're alive. We thought you had died in the world of the living," Takuya proclaimed as he vigorously shook Isshin's hand. Amaya looked between the two men beside Takuya and gasped. "Ichigo, is he?" Nodding, Ichigo said, "Yes. This is my father, Isshin Kurosaki Isshin Shiba, as you know him and as you know he was the former head of the Shiba clan. I bring this up to prove to you that I am of noble birth, and in hopes of removing any doubt or issues with my proposal. I know I am unworthy of a woman like Yoruichi, but I truly love her with every bit of my being. I swear, I'll always treat her like the princess that she is, protect her with my very soul, and love her even after I die." Amaya couldn't help herself anymore, as a huge grin broke out on her face and she clapped her hands together. After she let out a small squeal of delight, she rushed forward, hugging Ichigo as Takuya walked up and clapped him and Isshin on the shoulder. "Son, we've never once had any reason to doubt you. You've made Yoruichi happier than we can remember her ever being. You have our full blessing, with the stipulation that you keep the news to yourself for the time being. While this is how we know you would both prefer, marriage in the world of nobility is handled slightly differently. Once you ask, if she agrees then we will enter your name as the accepted suitor for her." Amaya's heart melted as the smile on Ichigo's face could light up the entire Seraiti. Wanting more details, she asked, "And just how do you plan to propose, young Ichigo?" "I am vaguely aware of human customs involving proposals. I planned on asking her tonight, after the gala in private. Don't worry, I will definitely agree to your stipulation. I want to take her to the grounds where she helped me achieve Bankai, where I began to fall in love with her, before I even knew it. And as far as human customs, I want to give her the ring that my father gave to my mother," Ichigo said quietly, reaching into his haori and producing a small jewelry box. As he lifted the lid to reveal a thin, silver band with a beautiful arrangement of glistening diamonds, Amaya couldn't contain the tears any longer. Yoruichi had told her of how his mother had died, and in what high esteem Ichigo held her. That he and his father would see fit to use such a precious heirloom to propose to her daughter touched her heart greatly. Reaching forward once more, she hugged Ichigo again and said, "I pray to Kami she says yes, Ichigo, I truly do." As Ichigo left to prepare for the evening, Isshin stayed behind to catch up with a pair of his oldest friends. XXXXXXX. Kato stood impatiently outside the entrance to the Kasumioji mansion, the location for tonight's gala. Almost everything he needed to carry out his plan was in place, and he was simply waiting for the final component. It had been far easier than he thought to align things, and that made him nervous. He had even had the bonus of one of his spies informing him of the conversation held between the Hollow Captain and the Whore Princess's parents. This development gave his plan the potential to be even more effective, if it went according to his timeline. If not, the revelation of his heritage would ruin his scheme entirely. He had to admit, the fact that the young hybrid was of noble descent was a bit unnerving at first glance. However, should his machinations prove successful, it would simply be another piece in his vicious repertoire. Taking a calming breath, he thought to himself, it's almost time. They couldn't possibly see this coming. Most of the guests had shown up, his pawns were in position, and all his pieces were aligned. All that remained was Lord Kato. Kato's thoughts were interrupted by the appearance of a messenger clad in the black outfit of the Onmitsukido. Turning, he raised an eyebrow in question. Kurosaki Taiko has departed from his squad's barracks and is en route here. Smiling, Kato nodded. Now he could relax, as the final piece was falling into place. He turned and walked inside the mansion to make sure his own asset was in position and wouldn't be revealed prematurely. Showtime, he thought with a sinister smile. XXXXXXXX. Amaya Shihoin was a woman of seemingly unshakable composure. Nothing seemed to ever get under her skin, which had been metaphorically thickened through centuries of dealing with nobles. However, the sight she had just witnessed made her heart clench in sadness. Amaya grimaced, wondering how the day had gone so horribly wrong as she recalled the completely different conversations she had been involved in just earlier today, beginning with the one with Ichigo. However, it was this last conversation that had thrown the night into chaos. 10 minutes ago, where is he? Amaya thought impatiently. After her conversation with Ichigo this morning, she could not wait to see her daughter's face after Ichigo proposed. She continued to wait impatiently, greeting the crowds of friends and sycophants who came to kiss the asses of high nobility. Soon, her giddy impatience turned into annoyed trepidation as Kato sauntered up to both she and Takuya through the crowd around them. Ever since Ichigo had straightened him out, he had been almost unbearably polite and kind, and Amaya trusted him less than she would a ravenous hollow. Ah, Lord and Lady Shihoin. What a pleasant night, wouldn't you agree? Kato said in his annoyingly kind voice. Yes, Kato, it is, Amaya replied while Takuya simply glared at the man. He had never forgiven Kato for his despicable comments, though he was powerless to take action lest he start a civil war within the clan. How may we help you? She continued, trying to conclude this conversation as soon as possible. Oh no, I require no assistance, rather, I wanted to be of use to you and I think I rather have, Kato said with a wide smile. What do you mean, Kato? Takuya growled, finally joining the conversation. Why, it seems that you, Takuya, and the rest of the clan council has been looking into the issue of your daughter marrying. Well, this got me to thinking, wasn't she engaged to be married before? Then I remembered, yes, she was betrothed. What fortune it was, then, for an Onmitsukido squadron to return from an extended tour in the rarer parts of the world of the living. I had even forgotten about it, as the records of said squadron were sealed. Within this squadron was a man who was thought lost to history, but is the perfect solution to your problem. Son, come on forward, Kato said smugly as he turned his head over his shoulder. As the Shihoin parents looked behind Kato, both sets of eyes widened at the man emerging from the crowd. Time seemed to slow for the parents, as someone who could not possibly be alive was standing before them. Noboru, Amaya whispered in shock and slight horror. Oh no, this cannot be happening, not after this morning. Panic began to form in the couple as Yoruichi's former fiancé, a man thought dead for a century, smiled politely at them. Lord and Lady Shihoin, it is a pleasure to see you. It has been quite a while since we have spoken, the tall, raven-haired man said with a bow. Fortuitous, is it not? Kato exclaimed as he clapped the younger man on his shoulder. Since Noboru here is alive and well, by the laws of the clan, he is still legally betrothed to Yoruichi. Isn't that wonderful? When Kato finished, Amaya would later swear that she could see a cruel gleam in his eyes. Before either shell-shocked parent could reply, Kato turned to Noboru and said, why don't you go find her, son? She will be so surprised to see you. That sounds great. Again, it is good to see you Lord and Lady Shihoin, Noboru said politely as he bowed and left. Ah, young love, such a powerful thing, no. Yet, I must admit that my favorite part is the utter predictability, wouldn't you agree? Kato said smugly to the still shocked parents as he turned to leave. Turning, Amaya frantically began searching the crowd. Taking notice, Takuya asked, what are you looking for? I have to find Isshin, Amaya cried. There was no possibility of this ending well, but she would try to make it as painless as possible. Finally locating the elder Kurosaki's Reiatsu, she disappeared in a shunpo. Finding him in a corridor talking to a few of the older captains, Amaya pulled him to the side as discreetly as possible. Seeing that they were alone, she spoke quickly, Isshin, I need your help, something terrible is about to happen. Terrible things happening was not what Ishin wanted to hear. Not on a day like today. What's wrong, Amaya? XXXXXXX. Tonight had been torture for Yoruichi. Ichigo had been gone for the past couple of days, and he was supposed to be at the gala already. She hadn't even heard from Ichigo in days, and he had been acting strangely when he had left. She knew he must still be trying to keep some distance after the Zanpakuto incident. As terrible as she felt for her reaction, Ichigo had no idea of the consuming, all-encompassing grief that her sword brought to her mind. The last time she used it cost her dearly, and the mere sight of it near Ichigo had completely rattled her. Where is he? Her nightmares had gotten no less vivid, and much more specific. With Ichigo's absence, the once buried thoughts and memories had free rein over both her conscious and subconscious. Then there were the suitors. If they had annoyed her before, it was a pleasure compared to the anger they were building within her now. Excusing herself from them, she stepped behind the curtain covering the entrance to the balcony, forcefully sighing in aggravation. Several moments later, Yoruichi recognized a presence with her on the balcony. Before she could turn, a voice from behind her said, "Still fighting men off, I see. Such is life for a goddess, wouldn't you say?" Yoruichi froze, startled not so much by another presence, but by the haunting familiarity of the voice in Reiatsu. The familiarity was still fresh in her mind as this voice had been the one to plague her dreams ever since her Zanpakuto had been discovered. She had never expected to hear that voice again. Turning, her eyes widened even further as she confirmed who the voice belonged to. Noboru. Memories of her life prior to her exile and this, her previous love flooded her mind, stifling her senses and overriding all thought. It has been quite some time, hasn't it? Still have quite the effect on men, as you always knew, he smirked. Yoruichi asked, barely able to form coherent thoughts. Noboru was here. Noboru was alive. Alive? He replied softly, stepping closer to her. Yes, Yoruichi, I am alive. How is this possible? She trailed off. He blinked, not exactly the greeting I expected after more than a century. Then again, you never cease to surprise. I am here to see you, of course. The woman who promised to marry me runs away over a century ago, yet when I get back from an extended tour in the world of the living, I discover that after all hell broke loose, Soul Society welcomed her back with open arms. Yoruichi frowned, suddenly finding her voice. That summary seems to have excluded a few key points. Flashback 109 years ago. Yoruichi entered the Seraiti under the cover of darkness. It had been almost a year to the date that she had helped Kazuki escape with the Vizards. She had never gotten a chance to tell Noboru, to explain her side of the story, but that was something she would rectify tonight. As she traced the different Reiatsu signatures in the area, she felt him nearby. Upon moving closer, she saw that he was standing alone atop Sokyoku Hill. As she approached him, she heard him say, "I always hoped that you would come back to me." Seeing him turn, she rushed into his embrace. "I'm so sorry, Noboru. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to tell you. They were innocent, they had been set up." She was stopped as a hand raised to her lips. Noboru could never recall feeling such relief as he did in that moment. Wanting to put Yoruichi's mind at ease, he said, "Kami, I've missed you. Do not worry, my love, I understand. That bastard probably just used them as his experiments. But now you're back, we can clear all of this with Central 46. All you have to do is tell them where that traitor, Urahara, is. They would pardon you if you gave them him." What? Yoruichi asked. If she had been expecting him to say something, it most certainly wasn't that. Wanting to clarify, she started, "It was Aizen. He said it all." Noboru shook his head, cutting her off. He had heard the story concocted to protect Kazuki Urahara, and couldn't fault Yoruichi for having the wool pulled over her eyes, if that's what it was. Softening his expression, he said, "Aizen was here. Over 100 people saw him that night, Yoruichi. You don't have to cover for the traitor. Now that you're here, we can protect you from him. They might even pardon the hybrids if you testified against him." "No, you don't understand. Kazuki saved them. Aizen had been doing holification experiments on all of them," Yoruichi said, willing him to understand. She knew that Aizen had covered his tracks well, but she was one of the few who knew the truth. Aizen fooled us all. You must understand, she thought before the look on Noboru's face stopped her thoughts. Kazuki, why are you defending that filth? Noboru shouted, a year's worth of repressed anger coming forth. He was beyond furious. They were to be married, yet she runs off with another man, and now she is defending the same bastard with his lies about Aizen. He gave her a chance to prove his fears about her running away wrong, and she had simply proved that he was right. He's not a traitor. He saved 8 lives from an unjust fate. Why do you hate him so? He has done nothing to you, and I am telling you that he is no traitor. Yoruichi was stunned. This was not how she thought their reunion would go. I get that he is angry, but what is his fixation on Kazuki? What will you do, then, if you won't turn him in? Are you leaving me again? Noboru asked, barely concealing the rage in his voice. Why does she cling to him so? This has to end, now. Yoruichi's face fell. She had hoped that he would have believed in her enough to understand that she acted out of necessity. I have to return. I won't condemn an innocent man to save myself. I came back tonight to see you, to tell you the truth of what happened. I had to let you know that I haven't forgotten you, that I never would. So you're going back to him. That's your way of letting me know that I'll be remembered. Noboru sneered, his voice now dripping with contempt. He was losing his composure. He had practiced this conversation many times in his mind, yet in none of those examples had he expected her words. You're forsaking the man you promised to marry for a traitor and a group of freaks. There have been so many rumors of you leaving out of love for him, that you protected his little experiments. Why must you go back to him? To Noboru, this was a simple case of manipulation. Kazuki Urahara had blinded Yoruichi with tales of devious plots and ridiculous villains to cover his own treachery, and she had taken the bait. Why? Was it out of feelings for him? Noboru couldn't accept that she did it simply to save them, as Urahara's lies were simply too far-fetched. Yoruichi was stunned. What? This is about jealousy. People were forcibly and irreversibly changed, and doomed because of it, and all you could think of was that I went away with another man. Noboru, I only love you. I promised to marry you. But, I couldn't condemn the lives of so many when they were being unjustly accused. They are victims, not villains. And yes, I am going back. If I return to Soul Society, I will be tortured for information and executed. I have no other choice. As she spoke, she could see the Mon's face falling. Why won't he believe me? I am risking my life just to see him. Does he really have so little faith in me? Gritting his teeth against the onslaught of fury that threatened to explode from him, Noboru turned his head as he whispered, I see that you will not deviate from this course. You have chosen with whom you are to be and rejected me. However, I cannot simply let you leave, Yoruichi Shihoin, he said in an angry whisper. What do you mean, Noboru? I haven't rejected you. I risked my life just to see you, Yoruichi cried. This was not good. She knew that look. He was going to try to keep her here by force. Noboru's face snapped up. Yet you're going straight back into that treacherous bastard's filthy arms. No, I will not allow this. Yoruichi was heartfelt as though it were breaking all over again. No good deed goes unpunished, she thought bitterly, turning away from the man in front of her. She had given up everything, and everyone, to do what was right, yet here she was being accused of treachery and infidelity. Steeling her nerve, she started walking and said over her shoulder, Goodbye, Noboru. She only made it a few steps before she heard the light shing of metal sliding. Instantly knowing what was happening, she stopped. Not looking back, she couldn't keep the surprise from her voice when she said, So you're actually going to attack me? I will do whatever is necessary to keep you where you belong. You will not leave me for some sick scientist and a bunch of tainted souls, the enraged man growled. Fighting back the tears that were threatening to fall, Yoruichi quietly said, Noboru, I am not going to fight you. Just let me go. Her sentence was cut off as she fell to her knees to avoid the sword that she could sense coming at her shoulder. Once the strike had passed, she quickly rolled to her side, viciously lashing a foot out to catch Noboru in the stomach and send him stumbling back. Getting to her feet, Yoruichi spun to face her attacker with narrowed eyes. Her pain at the idea of being attacked by her fiancé was at war with her survival instincts and years of training. She knew that their battle would attract attention, making escape much harder. I don't have time for this. The alarms will be raised at any moment. I am not staying, Noboru. I love you, but my life in Soul Society is over until my friends are if ever proven innocent. Don't force me to fight you. Her words were met with silence as Noboru crouched low, ready to strike. Reading his movements, Yoruichi shun-po'd back, giving herself room. I truly wish it hadn't come to this, but I cannot linger here any longer. Time is something I simply do not have. Drawing her own blade, she held it in her right hand and its sheath in her left. She released a shaky breath and whispered, I'm sorry. Disrupt. Juryoku no Dansu, Dance of Gravity. Yoruichi was instantly covered in a dark gray fog of swirling reiatsu. Noboru stared as shock momentarily broke through his blinding anger. Yoruichi was still in her regular clothing, but her hands had undergone an unusual change. Instead of a blade held in her hand, both hands were covered in a substance that closely resembled quicksilver. Her fingers had extended slightly, narrowing into sharp, dagger-like extensions. So this is her Zanpakuto's release. She has always kept its release secret, and it seems that I will get to see it, so that she may escape me. Many have died at its edge, but no one has ever lived to tell what its actual power is. This is. His thoughts were cut short as his violet-haired fiancée appeared in front of him, hand drawn back. Not waiting on her attack, he quickly brought his blade towards her, aiming for her torso. His eyes widened in shock though as, rather than duck or dodge, she simply pushed forward a covered hand to intercept his strike. The shock was increased exponentially as he felt his swing completely reversed the moment his blade came near her hand, pushing his arm behind him. The unexpected action left him vulnerable and he felt a painful heat spread across his chest. Looking down, he saw a long, bleeding gash from his shoulder to his hip. What the hell just happened? His confusion, however, only served to resurrect his anger. Seeing Yoruichi's blood-stained fingertips, he realized that she was prepared to do whatever she had to leave Soul Society, to leave him. The knowledge that she would soon be out of his reach again to be with that bastard Urahara made his blood boil. Bringing his blade up, he readied himself to attack once again. You are mine, and your place is here. I will not let you leave. Please, Noboru, don't make me do this, Yoruichi begged, trying one last time to avoid further hurting the man she loved. She knew that this would end badly as few people were a match for her even without her Zanpakuto released. Its release reversed the momentum of any weapon's attack, greatly enhancing her preferred fighting style. Hearing an alarm sound in the distance, Yoruichi knew that she would have to end this fight quickly, or risk capture. She felt her heart break even further as she saw Noboru raise his sword in preparation to release Shikai. Flashing forward, she interrupted his release, engaging him in a flurry of kicks and punches, as well as deflecting his strikes. Every time he swung his sword, a raised metallic hand would flash forward and the momentum of the attack would be reversed. After a particularly nasty punch to the abdomen, knocking him to the ground, Noboru rolled, using his momentum to get to his feet facing away from Yoruichi. Knowing that this was likely his last chance at any sort of offensive, he quickly spun towards her, trying to catch her off balance. Yet again, to his great frustration, her eyes followed the blade and she was able to deflect. However, as this last strike quickly flashed back the way it came, he shifted unexpectedly, moving closer to her and bringing his free hand up in an attempt to catch her throat. The instant before his hand could make contact, he felt a searing pain in his stomach and found himself face to face with a pair of golden eyes, wide with surprise. Frozen in shock, Noboru couldn't process what had happened. What felt like moments later, he was finally able to look down from the now tear-rimmed golden eyes, and onto the arm that disappeared into his abdomen. Feeling himself quickly fading from blood loss, he looked back up into Yoruichi's eyes. Desperately clinging to consciousness he pleaded, Please, don't go. Yoruichi couldn't believe it. She knew it was the only result possible, yet it still shook her to her very core. She was crying openly now, sobbing as she removed her hand. As even more blood gushed out, she saw the lights of his eyes quickly fading. Catching his weakening body, she gently lowered him to the ground. Knowing death was rapidly approaching, she kissed his forehead and whispered between broken sobs, I am so sorry, Noboru. I love you. I'm sorry. As his body stilled and his reiatsu faded, she could feel other reiatsu signatures closing in on their location. Looking one last time on the man she loved and was supposed to marry, the man she had killed. Yoruichi's heart could take no more and she fled. As she disappeared, she missed a man in a black shihakusho and mask appearing next to the fallen Noboru. Flashback end. Yoruichi shuddered at the memories that were triggered. Images of countless nights spent curled up, all alone as she cried herself to sleep while her subconscious constantly tormented her with memories of that horrid night. Noboru solemnly nodded. I know I was the one in the wrong, Yoruichi. I was so consumed by pure jealousy that I couldn't even consider the truth in your words. Every day during that first year you had left, I had to combat pitying glances and offers of consolation since everyone claimed that my fiancé had disposed of me in favor of a traitor. I let it get the best of me, and completely shut out everything else. Stepping closer, Noboru gently grabbed her hands. I am so sorry, my love. I am sorry that I gave into my petty jealousy and rejected your truth. Not a day goes by that I haven't thought of you, or the love that I still hold for you. When I heard that you were back, I knew I had to come and beg your forgiveness. Please, forgive my foolishness. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you again, and I lost my senses. I know that there is no excuse to ever draw my sword against you, but please know that I am sorry and that my love for you burns stronger than ever. Yoruichi was stunned. Years, no, decades worth of memories that she had been forcefully repressing came flooding back to her mind. Their time together, the love they had shared, the pain and brokenness she had seen on his face as he laid bloodied on the ground, it all came roaring back, hypnotizing her under the spell of Noboru's presence, his touch, his words, blocking out everything else but the two of them. Her complete consciousness was arrested and consumed with the myriad of intense emotions that she had kept at bay. These words were ones she had secretly craved to hear for so long. She had given up her zanpakuto and done everything she could to avoid love in all forms due to the pain and heartbreak she had suffered those many years ago, and now, hearing him beg her forgiveness, him proclaiming his undiminished love, she couldn't help but be drawn to him. I missed you dearly, love, he whispered as he leaned down to kiss the still stunned Yoruichi. However, when their lips met, the weight of all her terrible memories that had just returned felt as if they had been lifted from her shoulders. So many warm feelings coursed through her, intensifying the shock of the moment. These words, that voice, all served to transport her back in time. This kiss felt like the answers to a question she had been unable to answer, and she soon found her arms seemingly of their own accord encircling his neck, deeply returning the kiss. After a few minutes, as they parted lips, she stared into his eyes as she said back to him, I missed you too, so much. Her feeling of warmth quickly dissolved, though, as she felt a sudden spike in reiatsu near her, breaking the nostalgic spell she had fallen under. Who is? Wait, that reiatsu. Her heart began to beat erratically as she became painfully aware of her position, and of whose taste was still on her lips. She turned her head slowly, dread coursing through her veins as reality continued to come crashing down upon her. When she turned, she saw Ichigo standing there, face in surprised agony, as if she had just stabbed him. Why? She heard him say in a broken whisper. No, no, no. What have I done? Ichigo. Yoruichi was painfully, heartbreakingly back to the present. The warmth that she had felt from her nostalgia mere seconds ago now felt like ice flowing through her veins. Noboru softly chuckled as he asked Yoruichi, is this boy one of your many admirers? You still ensnare the hearts of all, nay. Turning to Ichigo again, he said, you are intruding on a private moment between myself and my fiancé, son. Why don't you go enjoy the party? Noboru, no, was all she could whisper. Don't say that, you have no idea what he means to me, what I mean to him. But, Noboru is back, what am I supposed to do? I love Ichigo more than anything, but, Noboru is alive, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do? Yoruichi's mind was a maelstrom of emotions as she witnessed her past and her present worlds viciously colliding. She fought hard to keep her mind together as memories and feelings of both men struggled for dominance. Hearing a demonic growl, she was brought back to the present. She turned to Ichigo, who now had a furious expression and had taken a menacing step towards Noboru. She was thoroughly surprised, though, to see Zangetsu and Shiro suddenly appear in front of him, holding him back. Let us leave, Ichigo. No good will come from staying here. Come on, King, even I know you'll regret it if you stay. I'm all for carnage, but you're not thinking straight. Zangetsu, Shiro, what are you doing here? Yoruichi managed to gasp. Was Ichigo going to hurt Noboru? He must not be in his right mind, I have never seen him so furious. Saving your companion's life, Zangetsu said with the coldest glare Yoruichi had ever seen. XXXXXXXXX. Finally extricating himself from the crowds of nobles, Ichigo went in search of Yoruichi. The last few days without her had been surprisingly hard for him, even with the revelation of the family that he didn't know about, and he was ready to have her in his arms again. His talks with his dad had really helped his confidence in what he wanted to do, and he had just gotten her parents' blessing on his proposal to her earlier that day. Where is she? He wondered. He hadn't actually seen her, or her parents since he had arrived, so he decided to try and find her Reiatsu. Finally sensing her Reiatsu, he began to move towards her location, but he noticed that he was approaching a balcony that was blocked by a large curtain. Maybe I can surprise her. Kami, I missed her. Grinning, he silently pushed through the curtain, only to freeze when he did. Whoops, wrong balcony, he thought as he saw a man's back, his head bent forward. I've missed you dearly, my love, the man whispered as he leaned down to kiss whoever was in front of him. As Ichigo was about to sneak back into the main room, he caught a glimpse of hair to the side of the man's shoulder. Purple hair. Purple hair. Wait, what? What the hell? The only living soul he knew with purple hair was. No, she would never, but her Reiatsu. I could sense it anywhere. Ichigo's body took over as he made a silent sidestep, needing to get a better view. Pure terror and rage began to seep into his mind as he began to suspect who the person was in front of this man. Surely not. Please. Kami. Please no. I'm begging you. No. Ichigo's heart was crashing in his chest as he gained a clearer view of the two. His entire being froze as the impossible scene in front of him became blindingly, heart-shatteringly clear. Yoruichi was being kissed by this man, but what was so much worse, so much more devastating, was when he saw her arms encircle the man's neck, eagerly returning the kiss. Ichigo couldn't move, his mind was frozen at the impossible image in front of him. He couldn't make sense of it. Hadn't she said that she loved him? Hadn't they spent every night together, sharing every part of themselves? How was this even possible? Soon, the pair broke apart, ending the kiss. I missed you too, so much, Yoruichi said to the man with a blissful look on her face. Ichigo's Reiatsu began to press on the area, with each of them looking over at him with surprised expressions. Yoruichi looked shell-shocked, her eyes were wide as saucers, dawning in horror as she clearly realized that Ichigo had seen the whole thing. She froze at the look of utter devastation on his face, and the clear agony in his eyes. Why? Was all Ichigo could say. The man, seemingly amused, softly chuckled as he asked Yoruichi, "Is this boy one of your many admirers? You still ensnare the hearts of all, nay." Turning to Ichigo again, he said, "You are intruding on a private moment between myself and my fiancé, son. Why don't you go enjoy the party?" Noboru. No. Yoruichi whispered almost inaudibly. Ichigo's mind snapped into full clarity. This bastard takes part in shattering the most important aspect of my life, then fucking mocks me. Fiancé. What the hell is going on? Yoruichi's not even looking at me or saying a word to me. Why would she do this? Who is he? She. No. She said she loved me. Ichigo's fury began to build. This anger, this fury was different than any he had ever felt. This anger boiled inside of him, coiling around his innards like a snake. His limbs began to tingle and he felt slightly faint as a red haze began clouding his vision. Stepping forward, he opened his mouth to allow the terrifying growl that was building out, but suddenly he felt two hands on his shoulders, pushing against his front. Looking side to side, he saw Zangetsu and Shiro standing before him, each holding him back. Let us leave, Ichigo. No good will come from staying here. Come on, King, even I know you'll regret it if you stay. I'm all for carnage, but you're not thinking straight. Zangetsu, Shiro, what are you doing here? Yoruichi managed to gasp. Leveling a look that could freeze the flames of Ryujin Jaka, Zangetsu said with an equally cold tone, saving your companion's life. Looking back to Ichigo, Yoruichi saw that his eyes had taken on new life, pure fury and hatred added to the agony. Ichigo's eyes had not left Noboru, and she knew Zangetsu was telling the truth. Whoever you two are, you need to take this boy out of here. I will not tolerate his rudeness or petty infatuation. If he continues to act so disrespectfully, I will have to teach him some manners, Noboru said, scoffing at Zangetsu's comment. Feeling a sharp rise in Reiatsu, Shiro said, "Shit. Old man, we gotta get him out of here." Yanking up the sleeve of Ichigo's kimono, they both noticed the links of his seal disappearing. "I can help with that," a voice said as a large fist connected with the side of Ichigo's head, instantly knocking him unconscious. "I'm sorry, son," he muttered. Everyone was shocked to see Isshin standing behind Ichigo, catching him as he slumped down. Lifting him onto his shoulder, he said to Shiro and Zangetsu, "He's gonna come to pretty soon. Let's go where we can handle what's gonna happen." Yoruichi noticed that Isshin had Zangetsu's blade on his back, as well as his own, Angetsu, on his hip. The two materialized spirits nodded and turned to exit the balcony when they heard Noboru scoff, "Arrogant little brat, spoiling our reunion." Before anyone could blink, Shiro had turned and sonitoed behind the man, grabbing his chin with one hand while pulling his shoulders in different direction with the other. Once the veins began to stand out in Noboru's neck, Shiro growled, "I got a problem with anyone but me talking to the king like that. Know that the only reason your head is still attached is because Kingy would have to deal with the fallout, plus he deserves first shot at your neck. Mock him again and I'm gonna be bathing in your blood, got it?" "Shiro, please let him go," Yoruichi begged, scared he would actually kill Noboru. This was getting too far out of hand, and she knew it had to stop before her mindless actions got someone killed. "Shut up, you backstabbing bitch. I told you what would happen if you made it rain again, and you brought a fucking hurricane. You and I will have the playtime I promised soon enough," he snarled. "Shiro, come, we need to get Ichigo somewhere safe." "Yeah, I know," Shiro muttered as he roughly dropped Noboru to the floor. He kicked him roughly in the side, saying to Isshin, "You're probably gonna want to call that Kenpachi guy. There's gonna be hell to pay when King wakes up. We're gonna need some folks to keep him occupied till he cools down. He'll be waiting for us at Sokyoku Hill. I sent a few hell butterflies to him and a few others telling them to go up there when I felt Ichigo's Reiatsu spike. I have a feeling that this will be a long night." "Isshin," Yoruichi whispered, trying to find a coherent train of thought. "What have I done? Kami, Ichigo, I am so sorry. Why do they need Kenpachi?" All three men turned, looking back to her. Shiro's eyes burned with fury, Zangetsu still maintained his brutally icy demeanor and Isshin looked at her with pity. He simply shook his head at her, then turned and shunpioed with Ichigo on his shoulder, Zangetsu and Shiro following behind. When they had left, Yoruichi was shocked again as a person became visible against the balcony's frame. Gasping, she could no longer contain her tears as she looked into the disappointed face of her mother. XXXXXXXXXX. Kato had to smother the grin that threatened to spread across his face as he watched an odd group of men carrying Ichigo out quickly through the back of the ballroom. He didn't recognize them, but it mattered little. He had been worried for a moment when he felt the boy's Reiatsu spike, but it seems that things turned out well. A bonus came when he saw Amaya half carrying a sobbing Yoruichi a few moments later, followed by Noboru. He couldn't stop the chuckle, though, that came shortly after they had left. His plan, the plan that the couple had actually provided him, had gone off like clockwork. Many people tried to hatch devious schemes against people in love, and would always be unsuccessful for one simple reason: few people in this world knew the only truly effective way to combat love. Almost always, anyone trying to fight love, whether to try and break it, to overcome it, to create a division within it, would use the wrong weapon. Hate, deceit, anger, and other weapons were all weak in the face of love. Those forces, more often than not, would bring people in love together against it. They were more unifying, giving people something to team up and fight against. No, the most effective tool, the most effective weapon that he had ever found against love is love itself. It was not always an easily accessed weapon, but when a scenario could be found to actually harness it, it was more effective than the sharpest zanpakuto. Love could tear the heart apart just as easily as it could make it whole. Love could create confusion, insecurity, and doubts when used against one in love. This scenario was a perfect example. Yoruichi loved the hollow captain, and he loved her in return. What Yoruichi didn't know was that the man she had loved so long ago, the man she thought she had killed, was alive. Flashback 109 years ago. As the alarms began to sound, Kato made his way up to Sokyoku Hill. Ever since that bitch Yoruichi had left, one of his squad members Noboru would come up here and stare off into the distance, and his Reiatsu was one of the ones he had felt just a moment before. Making it to the top of the hill, Kato's eyes widened as he took in the bleeding heap on the ground. Flashing next to the body, he knelt down and looked at the fallen man. Reaching out, Kato placed his fingers on Noboru's throat. He's still alive. Acting fast, Kato used a Keto healing spell that he had learned for field work. After a few moments, the bleeding finally stopped. Picking him up, Kato flashed away to the 4th Division. A few days later, when Noboru woke up, his eyes found the man sitting in his room. "Lieutenant Kato," he said weakly. Standing up, the older man walked over. "Easy now. You were injured pretty badly. Just rest up." Is she gone?" he whispered. Looking down, Kato instantly knew who he was talking about by the look on his face. "She's not in Soul Society." End flashback. The first day that Noboru had been back on his feet, Kato had pulled some strings and gotten him assigned to a series of exploratory missions, the documentation of which would be sealed. To be honest, Kato had actually forgotten about the whole situation several decades ago. Keeping it out of sight and out of mind had been effective. When Noboru had come back about a week ago, however, it appeared to be a gift from above. After hearing the conversation between Yoruichi and Ichigo, he knew he had an opportunity he couldn't pass up. It had taken a few conversations with the newly arrived Noboru for the pieces to fall into place, but once they had, Kato had been able to time things perfectly. Now, all he has to do is help encourage the wedding to finalize it all. Looking over at the doorway that they had all exited out of, the grin came back full force. "You messed with the wrong man. While I am eager to see the fallout from this, I am not even close to being done with you, especially you, you hollow-tainted fool." XXXXXXXXXXX. When the group of men arrived at Sokyoku Hill, Isshin laid Ichigo on the ground. Turning to Urahara and Kenpachi, who were waiting for them, he explained what had happened. Seeing their stunned expressions, he said, "I think you're in for a hell of a fight tonight. Just don't talk to him about what happened. He's gonna be suffering enough on that as it is." Kenpachi nodded as he wanted to fight Ichigo, not torture him. Urahara kept a solemn face. He was not completely surprised that Yoruichi's past had came back to smack her in the face, but he knew Ichigo was paying the price yet again instead of the responsible parties. Turning to Shiro and Zangetsu, Isshin said, "You two need to rejoin him. If he loses control or is close to killing one of us, drag him into his inner world. We can let him blow off steam, but if he goes full power, we're in trouble." "He's not going full power. I've got it covered, Pops," Shiro muttered as they both dissolved back into Ichigo's body, which started to stir as they rejoined him. "What the hell? Damn, my head," he muttered. "Sorry about that, son. I just wanted to get you out of there before you killed the guy. Anyways, I brought you up here to blow off some steam." "Shinji and the gang are at the side, making sure nobody interrupts us," Isshin said, looking with pity on his heartbroken son. The events of the night quickly began to catch up with Ichigo. The kiss, the mocking, the overall silence from Yoruichi. Suddenly his rage began to roar back to life. "How could she do this to me? She said she loved me, but she kissed him back. I was going to ask her to marry me, to offer the rest of my life to her, and now this." Ichigo's thoughts burned his soul. The anger and hatred towards Noboru were like fire in his veins. Before he could think further, though, he received a strong kick to the side of his head, knocking him back a few feet. "Quit mulling over it, son, it ain't gonna help. Pick up your sword and let's vent," Isshin called. He knew that Ichigo had to get his mind off of it, well, as much as was possible. 3 very capable opponents would help. He grimaced as he saw Ichigo get to his feet and pick up Zangetsu. Here we go. XXXXXXXXXX. Yoruichi was dashing as fast as she could to Sokyoku Hill. After leaving Noboru at the mansion, they still had much to discuss, especially now she had launched herself to where Ichigo was to be. What could I possibly say to him? She was shielding her Reiatsu, suppressing it to unnoticeable levels. It didn't seem to be necessary, though. Along with Kazuki's, Isshin's, and Kenpachi's, Ichigo's overwhelming Reiatsu was flooding the area. As she approached the wooded area before the clearing that was Sokyoku Hill, she was blocked by Shinji, who had appeared in her path. Stopping, she noticed the rest of the Vizards, Ganju, and Rukia waiting just inside the tree line. "You shouldn't be here, Yoruichi," he said quietly. His face betrayed no emotion, but his eyes were hard. "Please," she said, barely above a whisper. "I need to talk to him." "Don't you think you've done enough tonight, as far as Ichigo's concerned?" Rukia said in a cold voice. "Does he look to be in a talking mood?" At this, she jerked her head over her shoulder, motioning to the group fighting in the distance. Yoruichi's eyes widened as she saw Ichigo in his Bankai form with his mask fighting Kazuki, Isshin and Kenpachi, and winning. Snarls, grunts and insane laughter were mixed with the clanging of swords, echoing across the clearing. "Look, Yoruichi, everyone has their pasts," Shinji began. "We know that better than most. I am sorry you had to pay a price for saving us as well, but that is not Ichigo's fault. He has sacrificed more than anyone, and deserves to be put first for once. We can't tell you what to do, or who to choose, but we will not allow Ichigo to be second place to anyone. He is not only our captain, but our fiercest friend. He needs to release his hurt tonight, and having you near will not help. Go home, Yoruichi. Maybe, just maybe, he can talk tomorrow." Yoruichi was about to argue when they felt Kenpachi's Reiatsu skyrocket. Turning, they saw that Ichigo had ripped off Zaraki's eye patch with his hand, accompanied by a loud roar. In response to this increased Reiatsu, Ichigo's own began to climb even higher, with the other combatants showing the strain. His mask disappeared, with his eyes taking on a fierce blue glow. "Shit!" Shinji exclaimed. "Rose, Love, Kensai, get in there." The 3 nodded and Shun-PO'd over to the fight. After several more minutes of frenzied and vicious fighting, Isshin kicked Ichigo back, breaking the fight for a moment. Even from the distance they were at, Yoruichi, Rukia and the Vizards heard Isshin stop panting long enough to call, "Son, don't you think you've let out enough steam for now?" XXXXXXXX. Ichigo had never felt like this before. Fury seemed to be everything. It was air, it was bone, it was blood, it was muscle, it was not enough. Images of what he had seen kept flashing through his head. Every time he saw that smug bastard's face, the only desire he felt was an immense bloodlust. Turning his attention to the fight, he traded blows with all 3 men who had come to help him vent. "I don't need to vent. I need a goddamn lobotomy. Something, anything to stop that image from playing in my mind. Why? Feeling his rage surge, Ichigo started pressing forward on his attackers. A distracting Sero at Urahara, a back-breaking swing to his dad's sword, and Kenpachi, that son of a bitch, was holding back and still able to laugh. "Fuck that, you can laugh when I'm a bleeding heap." Ichigo dashed forward, ripping Kenpachi's eye patch off, roaring in approval when he felt the captain's Reiatsu skyrocket. "Now here we go." Removing even more of his seal, Ichigo's form began to change, with his mask disappearing and his eyes taking on a frightening blue glow. "Shit!" he heard Shinji shout. "Rose, Love, Kensai, get in there." "Now we're talking," Ichigo thought, a grin that would make Shiro proud crossing his now maskless face. The extra combatants helped in keeping his mind focused on the fight. However, after trading several more blows with each, his father kicked him hard in the face, sending him back a few feet and breaking his concentration. "Son, don't you think you've let out enough steam for now?" he panted. "How can it ever be enough?" Ichigo yelled, fighting a strong urge to thrust Zangetsu through his eye as he gripped the jet-black blade with both hands tight enough to make his hands bleed. "I can still see every last damn detail. Every fucking second of it. I can still see her arms going around his neck, her kissing him back. She kissed him back. Do you know what that means? She chose him, whoever the fuck he is, over me. She chose him. Now I can't even kill the bastard because she chose him. I am sick of being noble. I am sick of being everyone's pawn. I am sick of being so fucking disposable. As he shouted, he launched himself at Kenpachi, trading multiple vicious blows. Zaraki was able to get a brutal slash on Ichigo's chest. Yet, after a particularly nasty punch to Zaraki's face which momentarily leveled the captain, Ichigo paused to breathe while clutching his head with his hands, fighting the urge to pull clumps of his hair out. Ichigo, I am so sorry. Please, you have to understand, we were engaged. I had left him. I thought I had killed him. Seeing him again, it was just so confusing, Yoruichi thought, fighting hyperventilation as she was desperate to find some bit of reason, something to make the night make sense. How had it gotten here? 1 minute, she is dying to see him. The next, she forgets everything but the man who just reappeared in her life after over a century. I'm sorry, son. Everyone has their pasts. Yoruichi's just caught up with her tonight. Pacing like a caged animal, Ichigo growled, so she kissed him. After all the times she told me she loved me. After all we've shared, she kissed him. Why can't I ever come out on top? Why can't I ever be anything more than a fucking sacrifice? Ichigo's eyes were wide, wild with agony and fury. He stopped pacing, his anger breaking to reveal his agony. He turned to his dad, whispering in a broken voice, Otu-san, why? I love her so much, but this, I can't fight this. I don't know what to do. Dad, how am I supposed to deal with this? Isshin's heart clenched at the sight of his son's agony. He never calls me Otou-san unless it's bad. Damn it, this kid just can't catch a break. I know she had a past, but damn, Yoruichi, this is bad. Heartbreak was never easy. Isshin didn't have any answers. It wasn't as if Ichigo had done something to drive her away, far from it. But now, Isshin sighed, knowing he didn't have any answers for his son. Ichigo was the type to fight his problems into submission, but that wasn't possible. There was no enemy to swing a sword at, no tangible obstacle to overcome. Son, I can't say I have any answers right now. Life has a way of biting us all in the ass, and the past never stays there. Kneeling just inside the tree line, Yoruichi's heart dropped even further. She was bitterly ashamed at how she had just completely forgotten Ichigo's existence for those few moments. Though she had suffered terribly in the past, she felt horrible for Ichigo having to face the same level of heartbreak. Ichigo, I am so sorry. I love you so much, and yet I do this to you. This hurts me too. I am so sorry. You were not a sacrifice. I just don't know what to do. Tonight had been an avalanche of emotions for Yoruichi, and she was struggling to keep her mind straight. I am sorry, Kurosaki-san. Fate has never been kind to you, Urahara said quietly. Ichigo slumped, cut up, bleeding and worn out, his knees hitting the ground as Zangetsu slipped from his grasp as his hands caught his fall, putting him on all fours. All present could see the shuddering of his shoulders as the sad sobs ripped through him. Shiro, give it to me, Ichigo said in his mind as he tried to release all of his seal. No, you're not ready, the hollow spirit said in his mind. While he wanted Ichigo to claim his resurrection, the reasons he wanted it right now were all wrong, and would probably get everyone here killed. Struggling, he and Zangetsu had their hands full anyways with trying to stifle their wielder's incredible Reiatsu burst. I don't give a shit if I'm ready or not. Quit holding my power in and give it to me. I need it. It takes me over, right? I'm unconscious when it's out, right? Then give it to me. Not budging, Shiro continued to hold in Ichigo's Reiatsu. I get you're hurting, King, the weather in here is more than enough proof. You're not ready though. My resurrection will not be your fix. It's not a drug to kill the pain, and you're not getting it until you realize what it's actually for. Leaning back onto his knees, Ichigo looked up to the sky and released a Reiatsu-filled cry to the night. The pain, frustration and agony within the cry shattered Yoruichi's heart. She also fell to her knees, silently sobbing at the sheer heartache she had wrought. She was startled as Isshin appeared in front of her. Looking down at her with no expression on his face, he said in a flat voice, "You need to leave, Yoruichi." He is in no state to talk, and you have things to decide before you speak to him again. You will not drag him along. Either choose him, or cut him loose. I understand your situation, and sympathize for you, but Ichigo will not pay the price any further. His heart has been broken so badly, so many times that it's a wonder it's still intact. If you are to be with Noboru, tell him so. Do not prolong his agony. I consider you a dear friend, and appreciate you saving him before more than you know, but if you draw this out and cause him more agony, we will become something else. With that, the elder Kurosaki turned and Shunpyo'd back to Ichigo's side. Yoruichi could barely breathe. Isshin was right, it was a wonder how Ichigo's heart was still intact. She knew the kind of love it was capable of. She had been the recipient, and knew that Ichigo's heart, no matter how damaged it was still bigger than anyone's she had ever met. There were decisions to be made. Yes, Noboru had been her world before, yet he had rejected her and given into jealousy rather than trust. Was that love still there? She didn't know. Her love for Ichigo was obvious. He meant so much to her, but could that overshadow what she had had with the man she had intended to marry? Even if she chose Ichigo, would he even still want her after her betrayal? Kami, she had so much to think over. Noboru was at the mansion, perhaps speaking with him could shed some light on things. She didn't know if she could talk to him tonight, though. Ichigo's cries and obvious agony still tore at her very soul. Turning, she fled back to her home, trying to stem the stream of tears and sobs that tore at her. After a while, Ichigo had passed out from the sheer exhaustion the night had wrought. Shinji had carried him back to the barracks, knowing that taking him to his room at the Shihoin mansion was out of the question. He had also offered for Isshin to stay the night, which the elder Kurosaki had accepted, as he had arranged for Karen and Yuzu to stay at a friend's house for a few days. After putting Ichigo in his quarters, Shinji showed Isshin to a room that was unoccupied. Hell of a day, huh, he grunted. That's one way to put it. I didn't see it going down like that, Isshin sighed. What was Ichigo doing when he went to see you, anyways? Shinji asked, hoping to lighten the topic of discussion. Isshin gave him a weary look. Sighing again, he responded, learning about his heritage and telling me that he was going to ask her to marry him. I even gave him his mother's ring to give to her. Isshin couldn't keep the disappointment out of his voice. Ichigo had been so excited, so proud to tell his Otu-san that he was going to ask Yoruichi to marry him. Isshin remembered how elated he had been himself, knowing that his son had found his happiness in this world. Now, he had no clue what would happen. Damn, Shinji muttered. No wonder the kid was so torn up. Fate certainly likes to kick him in the teeth, doesn't it? Of course, we'll do all we can to help him out during all this. Poor kid deserves a break. Isshin smiled a small, weak smile. At least he has friends. Ichigo inspires a hell of a lot of loyalty in his friends. I guess constantly risking your life and your soul for them will do that. Kami, can't you cut the guy a break? I know, Isshin muttered. Thanks for letting me crash here. I'm gonna hit the sack so I can be up when Ichigo wakes up. Thanks for being there for him, Shinji. Thanks to all of you. Don't mention it. I'm sure you noticed that we're a bit protective of our captain. It's time someone watched his back, 'cause he's damn sure earned it. Get some rest, Isshin. I don't see tomorrow being much better. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.